Shalom, shalom, Rastafari, and picking up where we left off about the Ethiopian World Federation, um, being the secular administration, and it brought us to we had a thought about the verse in Revelation where it speaks about the outer court and how the outer court was to be trampled by the Gentiles for a while. Maybe even kind of the explanation about that, but that it wasn't saying that the outer court was like the outer court was not bad, but maybe in a sense the direction of where it was going might have been confusing. Really, we could get confused in the direction where everything was going, because the overall state of mind of the church of the children of His Imperial Majesty, QEDAMAWI, HAILE, SELASSIE, is to basically move forward in the works that His Majesty was doing, and to continue after 1975 those works from a spiritual and a natural perspective, but be all well rounded. And it also brought us into consideration of the two chambers, and we were thinking about that within the Constitution document where it mentions the two chambers, and also making that spiritual clarification with it, because it's like, if I'm not speaking about the Constitution, but then can I back it up and clear it up in the spiritual and the canonical gospel, because we were mentioning in Article 127 how it says the organization and secular administration of the established, so of the established mean Yahweh established us, and in Amarinya, in the Amharic, the Royal Amharic, when you go into Deuteronomy, in the book of Deuteronomy, it speaks about how Jah brought us to, to be established, and if we violated the established order of the king, if we have violated that establishment, we had all those curses. There's like 14 to 15 blessings in Deuteronomy. I think it's like 28 from verses 1 to 14, and then 15 to verse 69. It speaks about the going to captivity by way of ships. But in this future, in this generation, being that His Imperial Majesty said that He will be replaced by the oncoming generation, and the Ethiopian World Federation, being that it came out in 1937, so a year after the Geneva Convention, His Majesty basically went into exile from the kingdom and then returned into the kingdom in 1945, due to what I and I call due to the transgressions of men. And then, of course, in 1975, the creeping coup, another fatal flaw in the interpretation, or basically a backsliding away from the true covenant of overstanding the Almighty God. So they had the creeping coup in 1975, and His Majesty, basically the kingdom from that point basically fell apart. Not the true kingdom is still there, but the people suffered. They suffered much genocide after His Imperial Majesty was taken out of office. But basically, if the houses of Rastafari, which are the organization of those who are founded in the principles of our and our Father, the Emperor, who is mentioned in all of the true religious services according to the original or the first church, like it says in Revelation, where it tells the people to return to their first love, return to your first love, the original doctrines that Christianity is founded on, and don't dismiss of the works of the Queen of Sheba and her only son Menelik. Because if you dismiss this works, then we'll dismiss the overall understanding of what the Bible is been trying to tell us. So again, the organization would be all I and I. You know, the one the you know, many rooms in the one mansion, or the many mansions in the one room. You know, however you want to see it. You know what I mean? But in the grace of His Majesty, you should know what we're talking about. If you're true Rastafari, you know what I mean? That would be the organization by the word of our Father. You know, govern the spiritual, which is spiritual consecration. You know what I mean? Being born again and performed according to the canonical law. Subject, a faithful Ethiopian subject, to the approval of the emperor of their election appointment. So the elect, the appointed elect, the elect of Ha-Elohim, you know what I mean, the faithful elect. The emperor has the right to promulgate the decrees. This is interesting. This is interesting because what we were going to previously, before we were recording this vid, we're actually looking at we're actually looking at well, we'll notice certain words in here. No, but we're actually looking at the Ethiopian Constitution of 1931. You know, and we were looking at Article 7 because the point of the Constitution to bring forth was when the houses come together and constitute, you know, and when the houses come together and they show these persons, basically because these persons already exist, but the only problem is the unity of the houses in this one order here, in this one order, you know, because the two chambers, the right side and the left side brain, they only go according to one heart, which is the one true God, Jah Rastafari. Remember, the pure at heart see God. They all have that one mind and that one heart. You know what I mean? If we don't agree as that one mind and one heart, operating as a government, you know, as a people, as the children of Jah Rastafari, as the chosen generation, as the replacing this oncoming generation, this generation. If we be that generation, then we're able to we have these people. Basically, is to say which ones are these, you know, and remember that Judah is my lawgiver. So in that sense, it's like, well, you being given the law, you know, you being given the law by Jah. Jah is the conquering line of Judah. So Judah is the law, you know, Jah is that lawgiver. So the emperor of Ethiopia will institute, and we felt this was very important verse. You know, so again, well, a very important article, you know what I mean, and Psalm 7, of course. But we felt that this was very important to bring forward, that if all the many mansions of our and our Father's house was to come together and be instituted within this, and in a order would show these persons could come to the agreement on who and which ones these are, because in each house we are officers and deputies. You know, we are officers and deputies, and we have our rights. We have been constituted according to the Ethiopian World Federation. So here, right here, the emperor, it says the emperor of Ethiopia will institute the chamber of the Senate, the Yehigu Mewosagena Mekurbeit, and the chamber of deputies, Yehigu Mememria Mekurbeit. The laws prepared by those chambers become executory by imperial promulgation. So remember, we're talking about the emperor has the right to promulgate. And that's interesting how, you know, remember this was in 1931 this was published. You know, His Imperial Majesty published this in 1931, and also brings us to a verse that we were looking at in the Hebrew that, you know, we felt that was, I think it's Esther 1 and 20. It's Esther 1 and 20. Yeah, it's Esther 1 and 20, because the reason we use that verse in this one, because that verse was the only verse in the entire KJV that mentioned the word empire. You know, so and when the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout all his empire, all the worlds, for it is great. All the wives shall give to their husbands honor. both to great and small. In the New Testament, from the Torah portion, this last Torah portion, which was Tzara'ah, was it Tzarat in the Hebrew, and then Bementzatu in the Amharic, and is Matthew, Matthew chapter 8, and I think it's in verse 2. Matthew chapter 8, verse 2. It mentions the word in Amharic, a word called Kerbo, which means to approach, or the time of approach. When I traced the word in the IOTA software, it took me back to Genesis. It took me back to Genesis, but it was a verse where Rebecca and her damsels, and it says that her dengel terochua, which means like her virgins, because her girls spiritually, translated in English would be her virgins. They use damsels in the KJV in the Old Testament, but it's interesting that dengel is the same thing when we say dengel marim. It's the same word. So it's used for virgins. So it's like, her office, her staff, her virgins. It's like her girls. And basically that they followed the servant, which would be like the churches, to the king. So in this same sense, we were in the Constitution of His Imperial Majesty, and in 1955, in Article 127, where it speaks about the established church, which is the bride of Christ, right? There we go. That's what we're getting at. the bride of Christ. You know what I mean? And so, again, we were speaking about this because it really came to a deep thought that if every mansion was to come together, every house of His Imperial Majesty, and those who are truly of His Imperial Majesty, coming together to say who these were, because we already know that the church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, unless it's the Tawahedo Church of His Imperial Majesty QEDAMAWI HAILE SELASSIE, and it goes according to the doctrines right here in Article 127, then it would be out of order anyway. You know what I mean? Unless it's founded on this doctrine right here. But yet that church that we know of out there, they took His Imperial Majesty's names out of their religious services, so we know they're not the ones holding the original precepts of his Imperial Majesty. And that's why we made this video. We want to put that forth. But this is just more clarity on that. To ask that, what are the chambers? Because that was going to be the title of this video. It's like, what are the chambers? What are the chambers for? You know what I mean? Because, so, again, in Article 7 and the 31, it's the Emperor of Ethiopia will institute the chamber of the Senate. Right? So, introduce the chamber of the Senate and the chamber of deputies. So we have the chamber of the Senate and the chamber of deputies, which it brings us to the beginning of these powers where they first instituted from. And the chambers in the word, of course, when we looked at chamber, and if you put chambers in, it'll take you to some different areas too, if you put in chambers. But if you put in chamber, it takes us back to one verse that's specific that we really believe is very important, which is Genesis 43 and 30. So, and Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn on his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered to his chamber. So here we go, his chamber right here. Now, the interesting thing about the word chamber right here is actually that, it's the word keder. And we find it interesting because Jah did say how he would dwell in the tents of Kedar. But now, one thing about this chamber is we find it says the innermost word part. Now, if you put in chambers, we said chamber because, the Holy Spirit, spiritually, my perceiving this is that if you put in chamber, right, it refers to one heart, one mind. If you put in chambers, then, you have the extension, the breakdown of the two chambers. But that constituently, as a constitution, as a nationality, His Majesty basically breaks down for us in the Constitution, the natural application of it. But the spiritual perception of it is that we move with one heart and one mind. So if Haile Selassie is the Almighty and he wrote this Constitution, then none of us shouldn't even have a problem with, following it or implementing it, putting it into action. Because as he said, the emperor, he would be replaced by the oncoming generation. We are that oncoming generation because we are consecrated again according to spiritual, canonical law, as it says in Article 127 in the revised 1955 version. But it was just it was food for thought to ask that, if every house, which, to say that I'm not aware if it's been done or the eyes have already, it's been done singularly and each house is established singular liberty-wise, but together, to put together the chamber of the Senate, right, put it back in, and the chamber of deputies, so we give thanks and praise to Almighty. But functioning as one unit, though, we understand that we have as many mansions around our Father's house. But remember, there's one heart and there's one mind. So us, as this Constitution, this one heart, one mind, as all us many mansions coming together, all of us locals of the Ethiopian World Federation coming together and electing these main deputies of as these constituents. So we give thanks. Just food for thought.